I leaned back from the window, my heart a steady, calm drum in my chest. There wasn't any anger, not anymore. No desperate need for their approval. Just a quiet, solid certainty. They'd written me out of their story, so I wrote my own. And today, for the first time, they were about to read the first chapter. They thought they knew Mitha, black sheep, the failure, the disappointment. They were about to meet the architect of a world they couldn't even dream of, a world built. From the ashes of their rejection, their faces would turn pale, sure, but not just from the shock of my home. They'd turn pale when they realized their judgment, their exclusion, was the very foundation it was all built on. The backstory, the wound, asterisk, 10 years ago, I wasn't the owner of a sprawling estate. I was just a 20-year-old kid with a sketchbook full of dreams. Sitting in my parents' beige living room, a room that always smelled faintly of lemon polish and disappointment. My family, the Walkers, were all about practicality. My father, Richard, was a partner at a successful, if mind-numbingly dull, accounting firm. My mother, Eleanor, managed the family's modest real estate holdings. My older brother, Mark, was already a junior associate at Dad's firm, and my sister, Brittany, was studying business. Getting ready to join Mom, they were all perfectly matched. Gears in a well-oiled machine. I was the wrench. My passion wasn't numbers. It was art. Specifically, video game art. I saw them as interactive worlds, new frontiers for storytelling. So when I announced I was dropping out of business school to study game design, the reaction wasn't just disapproval. It was disgust. You want to do what? My father had asked, his voice dangerously low. He took off his reading glasses and polished them. A classic tell that he was trying to keep his temper in check. You want to throw away a perfectly good education to draw. Cartoons. It's not cartoons, Dad, I tried to explain, my voice shaking a little. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's tech, it's art, it's design. It's filthy, he spat, the word hitting me like a slap. It's a waste of a good mind. It gave you every opportunity, and you want to squander it on make-believe. My mother wrung her hands, her face a mask of anxious grief. Kay, Michael, think of the family, our reputation. What will people say? Even Mark and Brittany ganged up on me. Mark, ever the pragmatist, scoffed. Do you have any idea what a game artist even makes? You'll be living in a basement, barely getting by. It's irresponsible. Brittany, who was always worried about appearances, was even more cutting. It's embarrassing, Michael. What am I supposed to say when my friends' siblings are all becoming lawyers and doctors? That my brother draws monsters for a living? The fight dragged on for weeks. It was a cold war of disapproving looks and silent dinners. I tried to show them my portfolio, to explain the potential, but they wouldn't even look. They just saw a stain on their perfect family portrait. The final showdown happened on a bleak Sunday. I'd gotten my acceptance letter from the art school. It was my dream. I brought it to my father in his study. He didn't even glance at it. Just leaned back in his leather chair, his eyes as cold as granite. If you walk out that door and go to that school, he said, his voice completely flat, you are no longer a Walker. You are no longer my son. This family, this house, it won't be here for you when you inevitably come crawling back. He was casting me out. It wasn't a threat. It was a final judgment. I looked at my mother, who stood in the doorway, tears silently rolling down her cheeks. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She just nodded, agreeing with him. That was what hurt the most. Her silence was a deeper betrayal than any of my father's words. A strange calm came over me. The kind you feel when you're standing on a cliff and you know there's no turning back. Fine, I whispered. If that's your choice, I packed. One suitcase that night. No one helped. No one said goodbye. Walking out that front door, I felt this deep, gut-wrenching pain of being completely and utterly alone. People say being rejected by your family feels like a physical injury, and in that moment, I got it. It was a real gnawing ache in my chest. I wasn't just leaving home. I was being erased. The backstory. The rebuilding that first year was brutal. I moved 3 states away to a city where I knew absolutely no one. My father, true to his word, cut me off completely. My savings barely covered the first semester and the deposit on a tiny, damp basement apartment that smelled of mildew and regret. I worked 3 part-time jobs: barista at 5 a.m., stockboy in the evenings, and a freelance graphic designer for pocket change on weekends. I lived on instant noodles and cheap coffee, and sleep felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. Some nights I was so tired and hungry that the despair felt like a physical weight pressing me into my lumpy mattress. My family's words haunted me, their predictions of my failure echoing in my empty apartment. But in the middle of all that struggle, school was my sanctuary. It was the one place where the things my family called filthy and a waste were actually celebrated. For the first time, I was around people who got it, who shared my passion. My turning point came from a professor, a man named Arthur Vance. He was a legend in the gaming industry who'd decided to start teaching. He saw something in my work. In the desperate hunger I poured into every project. "You have a rare talent, Michael," he told me after class one day. "You don't just draw things, you build worlds. But you're running on fumes. You can't create if you're constantly fighting to survive." He became my mentor. He helped me get a scholarship that covered the rest of my tuition and connected me with a small indie game studio for an unpaid internship. This was a foot in the door. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Arthur was the start of my chosen family, the kind built on respect, not blood. I poured everything I had into that internship. I stayed later than anyone. I used the pain of my family's rejection as fuel. Every time I felt like quitting, I'd just picture my father's cold, dismissive face, and I'd push harder. My big break came 2 years later. The studio, Phoenix Interactive, was on the verge of bankruptcy. In a last-ditch effort, the studio head asked if anyone had any passion projects, any small ideas we could develop fast and cheap. I showed them Ethereum, a game concept I'd been working on in my spare time. It was a story-driven fantasy game about a fallen hero trying to rebuild a shattered world. It was my story. They loved it. It gave me a tiny team and an even tinier budget. For the next 18 months, we lived and breathed Ethereum, fueled by cheap pizza and a shared belief in the project. When we released it, we had no marketing budget. Just put it online and hoped for the best. For the first week, nothing. I was crushed. I thought, asterisk, they were right. I'm a failure. Asterisk, and then a popular streamer found it. He played it for his millions of followers, and he fell in love with it. He praised the art, the story, the emotion. It was like striking a match in a room full of gas. Ethereum exploded. Within a month, it was a global hit. The money that came in was just staggering. Phoenix Interactive went from near collapse to a major player, and I, the kid who was supposed to be drawing monsters in a basement, was the creator of one of the most successful indie games in history. I was no longer just Michael. I was Michael Van Cy, legally took my mentor's last name, the CEO of a thriving company. The first thing I did wasn't buy a fancy car. The first thing I did was buy a huge piece of land in the hills overlooking the ocean. And on that land, I started to build my house. It wasn't just a house. It was a statement, a monument to survival. I designed every inch of it myself. It was everything my childhood home was not, full of light and air and silence. It was my sanctuary, my proof that I hadn't just survived their rejection, I had thrived because of it. The inciting incident, the reunion for years. I kept my success quiet. I valued my privacy more than anything. The tech and gaming worlds knew my name, but that was about it. I had my company, my close friends, my real family, and my home. The ache from my past had faded to a dull scar. I hadn't spoken to my biological family in a decade. I figured they knew I was successful. It would have been hard to miss, but they never reached out. I never felt the need to either. Then, one evening, I was mindlessly scrolling through social media when I saw it. A post from a distant cousin. Jessica, it was a group photo with the caption, "Can't wait for the Walker Grand family reunion. Team, Manus 1 month. It's going to be the biggest one yet." I scanned the faces, aunts, uncles, cousins, and there right in the middle were my parents, my brother Mark, and my sister Brittany. All of them smiling. I zoomed in on the flyer. The Walker Grand family reunion. It said in a cheerful font. It listed a date, time, and a rented event. Hall about an hour from my house. My name was nowhere. It wasn't an oversight. It was a statement. After 10 years, this was their final word. I was still not one of them. The sting was surprisingly sharp. Was that old feeling of being left out in the cold? Oh, the old hurt and anger came rushing back the lonely nights. The smell of that basement apartment, the cold look in my father's eyes. My first instinct was to slam my laptop shut and forget about it. But then a different feeling started to bubble up through the anger. It wasn't revenge, it was a need for closure. A need to finally face the story they'd all told themselves about me. An idea started to form in my mind, a bold one. It wasn't about crashing their party. It was about changing the venue. It was about making them face the reality of the person they'd thrown away, not on their turf, but on mine. I picked up my phone and called my personal assistant, Sarah. "Sarah," I said, my voice steady, "I have a slightly unusual project for you. It involves a family reunion, a canceled venue, and an anonymous benefactor." A slow smile spread across my face. They'd excluded me from their reunion, so I was going to host it. If you've ever been made to feel like you don't belong, or if you've had to fight to prove your worth, then you know this is more than just a reunion. It's a reckoning. If you want to see how it all unfolds, make sure you've subscribed. And hit that notification bell, because you are not going to want to miss their faces when I open that door. The confrontation, the reveal, asterisk, asterisk, the plan went off without a hitch. My assistant, Sarah, is a genius. The first call was to the event hall, citing a sudden major plumbing disaster, little lie backed by a very generous donation to their repair. Fund the venue canceled on the Walker family. The second call was to my cousin Jessica, the organizer. Sarah introduced herself as a representative from a foundation connected to a local tech mogul who wanted to stay anonymous. She explained that this benefactor had heard about their canceled party and, believing in the importance of family, wanted to offer his private estate for their reunion, all expenses paid. There was some suspicion, of course, but it was quickly washed away by the sheer generosity of it all. Jessica was sent a link to a portfolio of my home just carefully. Selected shots of the entrance, the lawns, the ocean views, no personal photos. The bait was taken. The Walker family eagerly accepted the incredible offer from the mysterious millionaire Dot, and so, on the day of the reunion, I stood by my studio window and watched them arrive. I saw them get off the buses, their faces a funny mix of awe and confusion. They looked like peasants who had accidentally stumbled into a king's palace. They pointed, they whispered, they took selfies. My father, Richard, stood with his hands on his hips, trying to look like he belonged, but even he was visibly stunned. My mother was clutching her purse like a life raft. I let them wander around on the lawn for a good 15 minutes. My staff served them champagne. They started to get comfortable, their shock turning into a kind of smug entitlement. I could hear bits of their conversation through a discreet mic I had near the patio. "Can you believe this place?" an uncle said. "Whoever this guy is, he must be loaded. I bet it's some new money tech nerd." My brother Mark scoffed, though his eyes were full of envy. "Probably has no idea what to do with it all." That was my cue. I took a deep breath, walked down the spiral staircase, and headed for the large glass doors of the patio. I pushed them open and stepped outside. A hush fell over the party. Conversations died. Champagne glasses froze in midair. They all turned to look at me. For a second, there was just confusion. They saw a face they knew, but it didn't make sense here. Their brains just couldn't connect the Michael they'd kicked out with the man standing in front of them, looking completely at home. Then I saw it happen. The moment of recognition started with my mother. Her hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. Then my father's face went from smug curiosity to slack-jawed disbelief. And then, like a wave, it hit the entire crowd. The color drained from their faces. Their jaws literally dropped. I let the silence hang in the air, thick and heavy. I let them squirm in it. Finally, I smiled, a calm, polite smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "Welcome," I said, my voice carrying easily across the now silent lawn. "I'm so glad you could all make it to my home. The aftermath, the reckoning, asterisk, the silence after my little announcement was deafening. My family just stood there, frozen. They looked from me to the house, then back to me, trying to make it all make sense. My father was the first to snap out of it. His shock turned to rage. "What is the meaning of this? What kind of sick game are you playing, Michael?" He boomed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. "It's not a game, Father. It's a reunion, and it's Michael Vance now." I paused. "You told me not to come back until I'd made something of myself. Well, here I am, and this is what I've made." My mother started crying loud, gulping sobs of shame and confusion. "Michael, ... how? This is all yours." "Yes, Mother, all of it. Paid for by the filthy career you were so ashamed of." My brother Mark just stared, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. He, the successful accountant who followed the plan, was standing on the lawn of a palace built by the brother he'd called irresponsible. The jealousy was practically rolling off him. Brittany was the one who finally asked what they were all thinking. "Why? Why would you do this? To humiliate us?" "Humiliate you?" I asked. "No, I just wanted to see you all. It's been 10 years. And since I wasn't invited to your reunion, I decided to host my own. You told me I wasn't a walker, so I thought I'd invite the walkers into my world for a day to see what you've been missing." The rest of the family, the aunts and uncles, started whispering and backing away, like the emotional fallout was radioactive. Later, my father cornered me by the infinity pool. His anger had cooled into a desperate attempt to regain control. "This is a fluke," he hissed. "This tech bubble will burst and you'll come crashing down." "Maybe," I said, looking out at the ocean. "But I built this, my own 2 hands and my own mind. The mind you told me I was wasting. Can you say the same, or did you just follow the path of least resistance?" He had nothing to say to that. He just stormed off. My mother approached me next, dabbing her eyes. "Michael, we're still your family," she pleaded. I looked her right in the eye. "Were you my family when you let him throw me out? Were you my family during those years I was struggling, when just one phone call would have meant the world?" "Family is something you do, Mother. It's support. It's love. It's not a title you get to claim when it's convenient." The most surprising talk was with Jessica, the cousin who posted the invitation. She came up to me, her face full of genuine regret. "Michael, ... I'm so sorry," she said quietly. "We were always just told you wanted nothing to do with us." "Ain't you believe that?" I asked gently. "I was young," she admitted. I'm sorry. And for what it's worth, this is incredible. You're incredible." It was a tiny crack of light in a very dark room, but it was enough. As the sun began to set, the buses left. They drove away in near silence, the happy mood from their arrival long gone, replaced by a heavy, awkward tension. I stood on the patio and watched them go until their taillights vanished down my long driveway. I was alone again in my magnificent house. But for the first time, it didn't feel like a fortress. It felt like a home, and I didn't feel empty. A deep sense of peace washed over me. A final, quiet sense of closure. My goal was never revenge. My goal was just to live well, to build a life I was proud of. The reunion wasn't really for them. It was for me. It was about closing a very painful chapter of my life. My worth was never tied to their approval, and my success wasn't about their shock. It was validated in the long nights of hard work, in the loyalty of my real family, and in the joy of creating something from nothing. They couldn't define me by their rejection. Anymore, I had found where I belonged, not in their world, but in the one I built for myself. And that was the greatest victory of all.